Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, episodes 237, 238, and 239. In these episodes, we do indeed not get closure on Usopp in these episodes, which is what I was afraid of. However, we get to see Frankie in his final form, I'm assuming, but I may be wrong. And it is really something. So, okay. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to the One Piece crew for commissioning this episode. This is one of the ones that was purchased as a block by a bunch of people contributing together, and really thank you guys so much for doing that. It's getting things commissioned bit by bit is still really, really helpful to me, but getting the block bookings also helps a lot. And I just really appreciate that. So thanks, guys. We've got a bunch of folks in the chat. Hello, everybody. Brian says, can't stay to watch the whole thing because I'm seeing the new One Piece movie with my daughter tonight. I'm sorry. The what? Wait, hold on. There's a new movie? I know that there was a series that they're doing, right? All right. You know what? There's too much. There's too much for me to keep track of. I shouldn't try at this point. I'm too new to all of One Piece to try and keep track of the variety of ways it is still being made. So I'm going to just step back from that and not try. Zig says, oh yeah, there are so many movies, and Florian says there are like 15 movies. Seraphim says One Piece film Red just released in the US. Red, R-E-D. Okay. At a theater. Because I believe you that there's lots of movies, but maybe Brian just meant I'm seeing it like streaming tonight. Maybe I just misunderstood the vibe there. Oh, okay. Seraphim says, gonna see it Monday, only day the local theater has an airing when I'm not working. This is the kind of thing that if they, keep making movies, which I'm gonna assume they will, I look forward to being able to participate in that part of things in real time. Obviously, I am not allowed to go watch a movie right now. I would assume, unless maybe being spoiled on some things doesn't always affect the way you watch the films, but I'm going to assume it's off limits. And I like the idea of one day having a chat in the One Piece channel about the movie that just came out that I can actually go in and talk with y'all about it. So that's fun. All right, cool. All right. Well, I have 3 episodes to cover, so I had better get back to this. But like I said in the intro, we do not get resolution to Usopp. I wasn't expecting resolution anyway, to be frank. I was expecting there to be a break, and maybe eventually we come back to Usopp and get a little bit more forward movement, but we don't even really get that. We have a moment with Usopp in the, I think, 3rd of all of these episodes, or maybe the 2nd one. And, it's only about the flood, the storm that's coming. So not even that. And I am certain that the way the plot is going, that's all we're going to get probably for a while. If we see Usopp again, I think it's going to be in very small moments for probably, I'm going to put out a guess here and say the next 10 episodes, just little bits and bobs. And then if we ever have a big moment again, it's going to be after things really start to wrap up with our Frankie and the shipwrights. So That I'm just going to make that an official guess. And maybe I'm wrong, but just wanted to, theorize out loud here a little bit. Gus says you can watch some of them. Movies 4 and movie 6 are pretty good and spoiler free for you. Noted. Thanks, Gus. So the only real acknowledgement we get of what just happened is that when we start this episode, Luffy is still sort of off by himself, staring into the distance, looking upset, but it is not otherwise really talked about too much except by Chopper, and he's immediately shut down by Sanji until later when we get a moment that I just loved. But at this point, what we're really focusing on is the fact that somebody tried to shoot Icebarg, and I shouldn't say tried to shoot, they successfully shot him. They tried to assassinate him, allegedly, and failed. I say allegedly because I believe him that Nico Robin was involved, but I wouldn't be surprised if he survived because she decided he should survive. Do I know how that would work? Absolutely not. Do I have any theories on how she could possibly make it happen that way? No, not a one. But I'm going to give Nico Robin the benefit of the doubt and say that if she was involved in an assassination attempt that did not work, it didn't work on purpose. And that is for two reasons. One, I don't want to believe that Nico Robin would have genuinely attempted to kill this man. And two, I like to think of Robin as somebody who is deeply competent, and that nothing happens or doesn't happen with her unless she deems that it should happen or not happen. I may be giving her way too much credit, but that's sort of the vibe I've got, and that's what I'm going to go with for now. I would be tempted to think that Icebarg was in on it, to be honest, if things didn't go the way they do in these episodes. It seems pretty clear that he wants her held responsible and is accusing her in sincerely, So I don't think he's actually in on it, but there's just something fishy around this. I don't know. Something's not right. So we'll see. Anyway, so when we don't find out about what happened to him. We just hear everybody talking about, I can't believe that somebody would try to do this. This is what happens when you let people like the Frankie family just run around willy-nilly. There's a lot of exclaiming and lamenting, but not information about what's actually happened until much later. Everybody from the Straw Hats is pretty much still processing what just went down with Luffy and Usopp. So Sanji is still pretty caught up in trying to find Robin. And I kind of this is one of those things where a part of me really likes this and another part of me is unwilling to give him credit for being concerned about her because he is such a horn dog, and it so often just centers around him being wanting to bang a girl, that I'm I want this to just be that Sanji's a good guy. And I think he is fundamentally a good guy, but also it's always going to be a little tainted. Do you know what I mean? But he is very invested in going out there and finding her. And he admits very fully, I don't even know where to go to find her. It's just going to be essentially him going up and down canals, just looking and hoping for anything, and not, he even at this point, when he shows up in this episode at the start of it, he wasn't around for a minute because he went back to the location where he had last seen her in the hopes of her showing back up again or discovering something new. And he was just chilling there. and comes back, and Chopper's just like, where have you been? And Chopper decides to get in on this with Sanji. And I'm really glad, because any time that the show decides that Chopper is going to go out into the world and actually do something, it's a huge relief. Like, I just feel Chopper gets so sidelined so often. And Chopper isn't like, he's very gullible, he's not like, I don't want to say he's not smart, but he's not savvy. So I think he needs to be with somebody like Sanji, but I think that he is good enough at just like keeping out of trouble intentionally that he should get to go do more than he often gets to do. If anything, Luffy is often the biggest like liability for all of them, because while he is a good fighter and that's super helpful, he doesn't know where to direct his fighting a lot of the time. Do you know what I mean? Like, Luffy feels like, yeah, it's helpful to have a gun with you for protection in theory. But if that gun is like just seeing foes everywhere, it's more of a hindrance than a help. So I feel like Luffy can tend to just start shit that wouldn't have started because he is impetuous. And probably, if you took a look at some of the ways things have gone down, there have been a few cases where if they had left Luffy on the ship, things may have gone better for everyone. But nevertheless, I'm just glad to see that Chopper is getting to go out and get into the city and get involved in something instead of just being left to guard the ship. We don't see much of Zoro in these episodes. And I don't know like what he's up to, or if this is something that I should have been paying attention to, or if there's a hint dropped, but there's just not a lot happening with him. But anyway, okay, so the two of them, Sanji and Chopper, they go out looking for her, and as they are doing so, they see a bunch of people. There's this big announcement where somebody is saying like, alert everybody, there's going to be this big storm, and they call it something. Can't recall what the title is for this storm. I'm just honestly thinking of it as El Nino. That's just what it is in my head, as El Nino. And they don't explain in the announcement what it is. They just like let everybody know, oh, hey, by the way, this thing is happening. And Sanji and Chopper have to go up to a dude and be like, what is this? Florian says Aqua Laguna. Thank you, Florian. So when they ask this guy, he's just like, what do you mean everybody knows? Oh, you're tourists. I guess you wouldn't know. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I should have thought of this, because this feels like a pretty big tourist destination. It would behoove you to like just tell people what's happening in plain terms and not couch it in, well, you guys all know what to do. But it turns out that this is this massive storm that shows up, I think he says once a year. And it basically covers, I don't recall if he says the entire island or most of the island. He says people are going to have to seek higher ground. When he first says this, I interpreted it as everybody go to the center of the city that's at the very top of this sort of like pyramid that they've got going on with the way the city is built. But later on, it looks like Frankie and his two sidekicks, what are their names? They are getting onto the sea train to leave, if I'm not mistaken. So it looks like when they're talking about evacuating, I thought it just meant evacuate the lower levels of the city toward the top and get into like, an area that's sort of designated for this purpose once a year. And it seems like it's actually supposed to be the entire island is going to be emptied out, which is really inconvenient. It being only once a year makes it sound like it's not that big a deal, but like every year is actually kind of frequent. It's this would be such a bummer. And I don't know how long the storm goes on exactly. But nevertheless, this is a pretty big deal. And what happens is that, and I loved this scene so much. Sanji is with Chopper, who is like very distracted. Oh, okay. Gus says they were getting off the sea train, coming back from buying stuff. Seraphim says, you're right. They just need to evacuate the lower levels of the island. Okay, cool. Yeah, it kind of like, because I was like, wouldn't that be why they built the place shaped this way? And okay, so that makes more sense. So this moment, Chopper is like distracted. And Sanji's like, hey bud, what's going on? And I love the way Chopper does this. He's like, I'm just thinking about how, like, you know, if there was somebody who wasn't from around here and maybe wasn't like on the land and didn't hear the announcement that we just heard, how maybe they wouldn't know that there's a storm coming and would just be sitting chilling on a ship right where things were about to pop off, and that would really suck, and that maybe somebody should tell that person that they need to leave. And Sanji, I kind of expected him to like put up a little bit more of a fight on this. I thought he would protest and just be like, he's on his own. This is the choice he made. It's not our responsibility. But no. Immediately, Sanji is like, that's an interesting thought. Unrelated. I'm pretty sure you told me about a medical bag you forgot on the Going Merry, right? And for a second, Chopper's like, oh, what? And he's like, a medical bag that you forgot. You remember telling me how you forgot it, right? And all of a sudden, Chopper is like, yes. Oh, yes, I said that for sure because I did forget it. So we should go there immediately. This just, I don't know, this was so precious. I loved this. So they go and they like stay kind of as far away as they can while still being audible. And they stand near the Going Merry and just yell, what's that? A big storm called Aqua Laguna is coming and is going to submerge the island and we have to evacuate. Yeah, that's right. You should get out of here because it's dangerous. And the whole thing is so over the top that I almost thought maybe Usopp was going to come out and be like, really, guys? But he doesn't come out for their whole conversation, and there's this long pause after they've like finished saying their little bit where nothing happens. And I thought maybe it was going to be that like Usopp wasn't even on the ship or couldn't hear them at all, or you know. So that pause goes on for a while, and I was laughing out loud at that moment because it's just after they're shouting and they're so goofy, and then there's just like them staring and waiting for something to happen. I was cracking up. But Usopp begins to open the door and the two of them just fucking book it. And he comes out and apparently he did hear some of it. I was worried that he was only going to have heard like the right order of and type of words to deeply misinterpret whatever it was that they had been saying. But no, he heard them say something about a storm. And then once he comes outside, he's like, and it is pretty windy all of a sudden. So I'm hoping that this means he knows he needs to like get somewhere. I don't know if he's going to be fully aware what he needs to do, but at the very least, if they've brought his attention to it, he won't be caught completely off guard. So I'll say that this is like mostly a win. I'm going to say this is a 75% win for them. They did their best. I think they're right that Usopp would not have like listened to them. And if anything, Usopp is so mistrustful of the Straw Hats right now. I can't help but wonder if they came and tried to tell him directly if he would have thought they were fucking with him, because he just doesn't really believe them and that they mean well for him right now, you know? But I just wanted to get that like little subplot out of the way because it warmed my heart. And I just really enjoy Sanji and Chopper together because I feel like Chopper has the kind of common sense that Sanji doesn't, and vice versa. Sanji's more savvy than Chopper, and he can fight, so he can have Chopper's back, but Chopper is better with sort of like the interpersonal thing for the most part, and he also has like medical knowledge. I like this team up, and I hope that they kind of are together more often than just this one time, because it's a lot of the time Chopper has either been left alone or he has been paired up with Usopp. And while the two of them and their personalities and how gullible they are do go together, I think they bring out the worst in each other because of that. And you need people with sort of complementary skill sets. So this works for me, you know? I could see Chopper with Zoro as well, but that feels almost too obvious because putting the sunshiny one with the storm cloud one is just such a trope. And Sanji isn't quite the storm cloud one. I really put Zoro, he is the, you know, the cranky one. And I feel like Sanji bridges the gap because he can go from cranky to sunshiny in an instant if there's a hot girl. So there's a part of him that kind of works in that way as well. So it's a little bit less of an obvious pairing, and I like it. Anyway, okay, so this whole thing going on with Icebarg is wild. It turns out that at the moment he is like in a coma. He is unconscious for some time, and everybody is like worried that he isn't even going to make it. Nobody knows what even happened to him other than that he was shot. And it's kind of funny. At one point they're like, we're going to find, after he wakes up, they're like, we're going to figure out who did this. But nobody even thinks to just ask him what he remembers. He has to stop them and be like, I saw who did it. And I was like, yeah, guys, I mean, he got shot in the back and from the front. He had to have seen something. Y'all are not good at this investigation part. But anyway, everybody is just like sort of acting as if were Icebarg to die, the entire island would be in trouble. There's an attitude of Icebarg sort of holding everything together, which I think is interesting because we haven't seen enough of him to really know what his deal is. And the fact that everyone seems to feel this way, not just his crew, but like random people on the street, all are as upset about this, it seems, as his own crew are. This is a very beloved man. And I'm not sure that everything would fall apart the way they are worried that it would, but it would certainly be, it seems, genuinely upsetting for everybody if something were to happen. So we also get this like doctor here for the first time who is, he has this weird, he's got like kind of a thick body, but real skinny arms. He's got a weird look to him. And this, these bushy eyebrows with a red cross like painted on his forehead and a really, really red hook nose. And I don't know if the like red hook nose is meant to be significant of something or what, but I was not like, this is not a reference or a trope that I recognized at all. But yeah, the doctor is basically like, he is in bad shape and whatever happened was really brutal. And he says there's no trace of locks being picked anywhere in the building. So nobody is really sure, like, there's no clues at all except for a really common mask that was dropped on the ground, the kind of thing that anybody could find. And a part of me is almost like, was that planted? Like, how do you drop something that you're wearing over your face and not notice that you have dropped it? It's either on purpose or something else like went wrong. So the Straw Hats are getting the news of this shooting, and Luffy is genuinely like, why would they shoot him? Everybody really likes him. That's wild. Like, I don't understand. And I think it's Nami who's basically like, yeah, this is a huge deal for this town specifically. This guy occupies a place of real like power and visibility. So her and Luffy go off to like find out more about this. Yeah, this is where Zoro just says, I think I'll just wait here a little bit to see how things turn out. And he says it to Sanji. And I was expecting like a snide remark from Sanji, but he doesn't give one. He just sort of like looks at Zoro like he doesn't understand him and takes off. And it's interesting because since they're not going to do like, they don't have the going merry to gather on in their downtime, they're just on this random sort of like balcony area somewhere that's not even their own property. And there is something about them just finding a random place to collect that feels so wrong. We need to get them a ship soon. We need to figure this out. I don't know. It's just, anyway. So, the one guy who has like that spike that comes up out of his hair, he puts forth a theory that maybe Corgi, who is the weird, like, sort of mobster type, maybe he is responsible for this because this dude just keeps on showing up and getting turned down, and then this happens. And he doesn't really... There's not a good theory to it. It's just a general sense of, we have no leads. I guess we'll just start spitballing and seeing what sticks. And this makes sense to me. I had a theory from the beginning that Robin was involved because since she's been gone and then this major thing happened, I figured something was up with her in connection to it. But that doesn't mean Corgi wasn't also involved. I have no idea what his deal is. So whatever's happening with Robin could be linked with him as well. But I thought that this was like as good a theory as any. And I don't know what it is this guy is trying to do with Icebarg, but he's clearly tried repeatedly. So it's something that he really wants. Seraphim says they said they got a hotel room. This is just the roof of that hotel. That's right. So it's like a temporary thing. And it just feels wrong. It's not like, it's just wrong. This is just some random building. Like, and they didn't even sleep. I think it's Sanji who's like, we spent all this money on a hotel room. Nobody even slept because everybody is too upset about everything that has just happened. Gus says Lulu from the government, Corgi, not Lulu. Right. He's from the government, but there's like a vibe to him. And I guess that's supposed to be the vibe in general, that the government is like fucking mobsters, basically. So yeah, this dude possibly being involved isn't out of the question. I think that makes as much sense as anything. And Square Nose is like, hey, dude, I know that there is sense to what you're saying, but because that guy works for government, you may not want to be like a fucking openly accusing him of murder. I think that's a bad plan. Just don't say it. And throughout all of this, we get a lot of like moments amongst the regular people. We have lots of news sheets that are out here, tons of newspapers, and they're getting circulated and various people are reading them. And then of these 3 episodes, the final scene in the last of them is Robin herself reading one of them. So there's just a lot of involvement of the public in all of this. And especially once the Straw Hats are accused, the regular people are riling one another up with the accusations against the Straw Hats with this like intention of taking the law into their own hands. And this is bad news. Anytime that you have a big mob that has decided that something is true and they're going to do something about it, it just doesn't usually go very well. It's, even when they're right, a lot of the time, it doesn't go very well. So I am not looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with them. And of course, we've got Paulie, who I do not know what to do with this man. He is so aggressive and so unwilling to listen. All of them are like, Luffy, I think, for once, is making pretty solid arguments, and nobody is interested in hearing him. Everything that he says later on, they're just like, say that as much as you want. And I'm like, you're not actually really interacting with what he's saying, though. You're not asking a question or really presenting any evidence to the contrary. You're just like, liar. And that's not really anything either, right? So anyway, okay, so I'm jumping around a little bit here because we do go back and forth, and there's this whole thing with like with all of these reporters who are trying to get information from Paulie as he is like going into this building, and he's getting really irritated and impatient with them. There's also the whole thing with the lady who runs the C train station being the one to notice that this storm is on its way. But I don't really feel like that's necessarily that important, and I may be wrong about that. I'm wondering what happens to her if this storm covers the island for so high up. Does it submerge the station? Does she need to come to the island herself, or what? So anyway, we have Nami, and she's like with Luffy as they're heading to find out what happened to Icebarg, and she's thinking about finding Usopp in the street and just how upsetting that was. And we jump from there to Frankie coming back to the spot where his house and his minions all used to be. And it is just wrecked, completely gone. And he is looking at it with his giant wide eyes. And then he took his mask off and dropped it on the ground. And I was like, oh, word, we're about to see his face. I thought maybe we were just going to have the mask the whole time. Not so. We don't see his face now. He takes it off. It's fallen to the ground. And the rest of this scene, I'm pretty sure, is almost entirely him with his back to the camera. And there's like a moment of kind of seeing a side of his face in shadow, but you do not get a good look at him until later when he goes up against Luffy. So, because yeah, these dudes who are remaining, obviously people don't really like die in this series mostly. So these guys are unconscious and they've been waiting for him to come back. And they report on the fact that this was the Straw Hat Pirates, and he is just like, oh, really? I guess we are about to handle those dudes then. So I'm going to jump into the next episode, and when he shows up, y'all, this moment is so great to me. He has this like design. It is, I feel like this might be one of my favorites. Seraphim's asking, are you doing dub or sub for these? Dub. All dub. Frankie is, when we finally like see his face, standing above everybody on like this bridge sort of overpass thing. And apparently the whole city knows what he's capable of, because as soon as they see that he is about to start some trouble, everybody is like, how about we make tracks? We shouldn't be around for this. This is bad news bears. This dude is wearing a blue Speedo bottom and no shirt, or no, like his shirt. He's wearing a Hawaiian shirt, but it's like open, unbuttoned, in a style that's like looks very vacation chill. Like it's not a bad look overall, but it's certainly a wild choice when you're about to fight somebody. And I'm assuming that this is because his weapons are all contained within his body. So making it so that he has easy access to his body actually makes logical sense, but I'm not sure that's really the reason why, or if I'm just making up things that are convenient. He has giant, thick forearms and hands that are making me think of some video game character, and I cannot recall who it is. You guys have got to help me out. I keep wanting to say Donkey Kong, but I don't feel like that's accurate. There's also like Wreck-It Ralph, but I can't remember if he has hands and arms like this. Regardless, they have got the two big blue stars on each arm. And then he has his hair, which he's got styled in this weird sort of, it's like a combo pompadour mullet situation. And that plus the sunglasses, it is just a really quite a look. And he has a metal nose. But the rest of him, despite his claim that he's a cyborg, looks very human. It isn't, but it looks like it's human. Oh, and I should mention the gold chain as well. But just overall, the whole look of this dude, I am loving it. The fucking huge sideburns and everything. And there is even something about his overall attitude that I find really fun, even though he's like the antagonist here, and I do not like him for what he did to Usopp, all of that, of course. He's a piece of shit. But I'm kind of like into him as our antagonist. Seraphim is saying, okay, in the sub, you get to hear a familiar voice. Oda loved how good Bon Clay's voice acting was. That he wrote Frankie specifically with him in mind as a voice actor just to give him another chance to be in the show. Bon Clay, who was that? Remind me of who this... Sorry, guys. I lose track of people. Florian is saying Mega Man, no. Gus says Popeye, maybe. That is who I'm thinking of. Yeah, Gus and Seraphim have got his Popeye. I actually don't know what Mega Man even looks like, to be honest. Florian says Bon Clay is Mr. 2. Oh, okay. So this is the same guy. Man, okay. So I'm just like very consistent on the characters that I like the best, apparently. Okay, I'm into it. So this guy is gonna go up against Luffy because of what Luffy did to his like headquarters, even though you low-key asked for it, dude. You are over here stealing millions of berries from them. They're going to do shit to you. In my opinion, this is the price you pay. And if you did spend the berries as you claim, which I'm not really certain I believe him on that, but let's say he did, I think that this is a fair exchange. He just wants to be able to like have his cake and eat it too. And that is not the way that goes, sir. So the fact that he is coming in here and trying to be like, now I'm fighting you because I can't believe you would do this to me. Can't you? Because to be perfectly frank, Frankie, this feels like kind of an underreaction. You stole all their money, almost all, when they have no ship even. That is the least of your concerns. You should be grateful they didn't just kill everybody. So yeah, he is starting some shit here. And we find out because initially he displays some powers that makes Nami go, oh my God, is this guy, has he eaten a devil fruit? Which like, of course you would assume that. That's definitely what I would assume. But then he jumps into the water of the canal and both her and Luffy are like, wait a second. If you ate a devil fruit, then you can't swim. So why would he do this? And this is when we find out that a motherfucker is a cyborg, which frankly, if you decide you're going to have a character who is a cyborg in a series like this, what he is going to be capable of is essentially unlimited. Like you could have him pull a new weapon out of literally any part of his body. And it would be like, well, but he's a cyborg, so whatever. I feel like there is just going to be no end to what we see he's able to do. The biggest thing we've got we've got the fire breathing, which is a pretty big one. Then we've got the air attack, which is like the big one later that essentially drains all of his energy. After he uses that one, his hair wilts, which is like the sign that he is out of power, which I am a huge fan of. Look, as somebody whose hair is high maintenance and uncooperative, the idea that how my hair is doing is an indicator of how I am doing energy wise feels very correct. So the idea that his pompadour and the current state of it is a signal for how he's doing energy wise, that just seems like very reasonable. I love it. So he's got that, and then he has like the machine guns in his forearms, which honestly, compared to like the air attack and the fire breathing, that is the least of them. Like, this feels a lot more like Don Krieg. You know, it's almost like a bit of a letdown in comparison to the other stuff that he's been able to do, because it feels very conventional. So we'll see what else he's got up his sleeves. But the whole concept of this dude is so interesting because he's a cyborg, yes, but he has this like dude on vacation sort of vibe. And then his two backup ladies are in bikinis of their own. Because, you know, earlier when I had seen them like getting on the train with him, they were in those big kind of robes that were like shapeless. They almost looked like big upside down, or not upside down, I guess right side up, lampshades. And I was sort of like, what is the deal with what they're wearing? And I guess it's just supposed to be an effect of sort of wearing like a trench coat and then having your underwear on underneath it. They're just wearing these like big cover-ups over bathing suits. And it's almost like we're going for a slight Elvis and a couple of like starlets that fall all over him kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, starlets is the wrong word. What are they called? Like Bobby Soxers? Is that you guys know what I'm talking about, right? The girls that used to just be like fainting in front of Elvis and whatnot. It feels like that, or like he was about to film a bikini beach bingo, whatever those are called, movies. Elvis was in a million like weird beach movies, right? It's a vibe more so than like a direct homage, but I don't know. I feel like it works, and it's an interesting choice to have him be like a cyborg. Like, what's that about? Seraphim says, and knowing Frankie, that quote, any part of his body, unquote, is totally on point for where he'd stash weapons. Gus says each of them has half of one bikini. Oh, do they? I didn't even notice that. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here. But suffice to say, these, oh yeah, okay. So the one girl has the bikini top and she's wearing like kind of Bermuda shorts. And the other one is wearing a bikini bottom with like what looks like a tank top. Hers, I mean, I guess you could say she just got on a tank top with just the bikini bottom, but it really looks like she's wearing a tankini, which is just a different type of bikini because it matches. So she's wearing all red and the other one's wearing all yellow. And they still both have like the very square hair, because I was sort of wondering if the hair was going to turn out to be hiding something, but no, that's just their hair. And the one that's wearing the yellow has a weird sort of collar. I don't know if it's supposed to be like a lei, but it's puffy, and yellow sunglasses. The one that's in red is wearing like pearls, and she's got these what almost looks like knee braces, like the kind of thing you wrap around your knees when they've been bothering you. Almost like knee pads that a volleyball player would wear. So yeah, this whole thing is really quite something. Like the two women are by his side getting ready to fight with him in a way that makes it seem like they are his equals. But I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, everyone, I don't think that the two women are cyborgs at all. They're just regular women, right? Unless they have their own devil fruit powers, which we may just not have seen yet. But yeah, either way, this dude, like, everybody knows what he's capable of, and everybody who lives in this town has dealt with Frankie a lot, and they're obviously kind of sick of his shit. They get out of the way when he's about to pull something because they know the damage that he can cause, but it's not even really like they're afraid of him. You know, it's not like they're under his thumb. It's just mostly like, oh, this fucking guy again. You know, nobody likes him, and everybody freely is like, Frankie, what the fuck? Get out of here, man. But he's just steamrolls over them because he's got these like wild powers. And I just thought it was sort of interesting to see an antagonist who is known to the entire island, but who isn't in charge exactly. That's not to say he doesn't get away with shit and he doesn't like run things to a certain point. When there were dudes that were shit talking his crew and they saw he was standing right there, they shut up and didn't want to like catch any smoke. But it's a very different energy than other times where we have come to an island where the bad guy is sort of like ruling the roost, you know. Obviously, Icebarg has been the barrier between the common people and this guy's bullshit as much as he can be. Obviously, Frankie is still, the effects of what he does still bleeds over. Otherwise, everybody wouldn't be so fucking annoyed with him all the time. But, Seraphim says, I don't know, but somehow it works. Sums up One Piece well. I think that's true, actually. Yeah, that's kind of like, it's just a vibe, you know, like it's not really officially anything. It's just sort of a feeling. And you're like, yeah, that seems right. So yeah, this dude is a lot tougher than Luffy was anticipating as well. I want to mention that Luffy has come into this fight with an understandable feeling of confidence because he has gone up against a lot of baddies. And this dude feels like a bit of a joke initially. So I think Luffy just doesn't really take him all that seriously to begin with. And when it turns out Frankie can whoop him, or at least is managing to do it initially, Luffy is genuinely like, okay, wow, you're actually a lot tougher than I was expecting. We jump over to the scene with Icebarg where this fucking dude who will not stop screaming, the voice actor who does the dub has the way this man screams accented in such a strange way. I can't tell what it is he's trying to do with this dude's voice, but it overall, the vibe it gives is sort of like either English is this man's second language, or he has like a hearing impairment, you know, like the way somebody who is deaf but speaks, how their words will be slightly like formed a little off. It's like you can understand what they're saying, but there is a pronunciation or an intonation that isn't what you're used to hearing. And that's sort of what I'm getting from this guy. And I don't know, maybe it's supposed to be that he's damaged his own hearing because he's so fucking loud. But anyway, he's talking about how the fight that's going down in the shipyard with Frankie, and that it's one of the Straw Hats going up against him. And Polly hears this and is just like, well, considering that our assumption is the Straw Hats are behind the assassination attempt, they really have some fucking nerve showing up at the shipyard like nothing's wrong. I can't believe that they would just bring their fucking faces anywhere near us at this point. Which again should be like their first clue that it is not what it looks like, but I guess they just think that the Straw Hats are that audacious. All right, I guess, sure. And Luffy and Frankie low-key are destroying the shipyard. This place is a wreck. It is fucking destroyed. I love when Nami is just screaming, yeah, go Luffy, beat up that bikini bastard. And his two backup dancers is what I'm always going to be calling them. They're like cheering for him. They're calling him bro, but they're not actually fighting. It's like they're just cheerleading from the sidelines. They're doing square formations with their arms, like they're imitating their own hair. I don't know what to make of that. But anyway, so at this point, the shipwrights all show up and everybody, all the townspeople are delighted that the destruction Luffy and Frankie are inflicting on the town is finally being brought to a fucking stop, because everybody has been like wrapped up in this fight, but they haven't been cheering for either side necessarily, because they're just like, you guys are just ruining our ship. What is this? So of course, when all of these dudes turn up who are the heroes of the town, the crowd goes wild and it's just like, oh good, we're finally bringing an end to this. And even Luffy for a moment is like, oh good, I'm really glad you're here, until they start to accuse him and his crew of being behind the assassination attempt. And this is one of the times where I feel like a lot of the moments that we have with Luffy being accused of things, either he is guilty of them, but he A, didn't care about the consequences, or B, doesn't understand how the consequences are related to what he did. Or B, he isn't guilty, but you can very much understand why somebody would see him this way. And the way he decides to handle it isn't helping his case. You're watching him like dig himself deeper into a hole. And you're like, Luffy, dude, you're not helping. Stop talking like this. And this time, it was really interesting to see them accusing him of something and Luffy be genuinely like, wait, what? No. Wait, how could you even think that's what's going on? Nami, for her part, she's off to the side and she's like very excited that they turned up and is like, oh, thank God, until she hears what they're saying and then is like, hold up. And they really go after Luffy. There is like a moment here where Polly is choking him with one of his like rope moves. He is just flinging Luffy all over the place. Meanwhile, Frankie is taking it quite personally that all the shipwrights have shown up, but none of them really seem to give a shit about him. They are paying all of their attention to Luffy, which is insulting just for the fact that like they seem to view him as being of no consequence, which is its own kind of insult. But also, he was in the middle of some shit with Luffy that he wants to settle. And if they take Luffy out, he's not going to get his satisfaction. So he's like, guys, what the fuck? You're interrupting our shit. We were in the middle of our face-off and you're ruining it. What are you doing? Which I found genuinely pretty funny. Like, Frankie just has a very clear objective. And whatever they're in the midst of, it doesn't even seem like he thinks they're guilty. He's not. I was sort of expecting, once they accuse the Straw Hats of trying to kill Icebarg, that Frankie would be like, wow, I can't believe you guys would do that, and like feed into it. But first, Frankie is just like, somebody shot Icebarg. Like, he doesn't even know what's going on to begin with. And then there's a sense of kind of, you think they did it? Really? Huh. And he doesn't seem to take a side on it just so much as be like kind of befuddled over the whole thing. So Frankie, I think what I like about him is that the malice that he has in him against Luffy is very pointed and specific about the destruction of his place. But there's a real sense of like, if he beats Luffy up here and gets and feels like, okay, I got you back, he'll drop it. Like, it feels like Frankie has a very sort of transactional one-to-one idea of how this is going to work, and that it's not personal, really. You know, like, I don't know. And I don't know if that's true, but there's something about it that I find very comforting because it feels sort of predictable in a way. And I may be mistaken because we haven't seen how he acts beyond this, but I am kind of fascinated by him as a character. I also forgot to mention that, like, he's got that giant chin, but it's weirdly divided through. It's got 2 clefts in it. So he's got like 3 points to his chin, which keeps making him look like he's got a beard. And I keep having to remind myself that that is just literally his face. So by the end of this episode, the shipwrights have all explained to Luffy that Icebarg saw Nico Robin and that she's part of their crew, and that's why they believe that the Straw Hats are part of this. Luffy is just really clearly doesn't know how to react about the news that Nico Robin was spotted. And his main thing is simply, why would we want this? Polly puts forth the concept that maybe y'all were just mad that we refused to repair your ship. I don't know how your minds work. It ends with him just sort of saying, who knows why you would do something like this, but you have reason to be angry with us, and maybe you just decided to take it out on us in this way. And Luffy, for his part, is just like, what? Like, there's a sense of disgust coming off of Luffy, of just, I can't believe you would buy this, you know? And Square Nose is like, you guys as pirates don't care about the law to begin with, so you can't think that the law is going to protect you, which I thought was interesting and actually not a bad point. Even Luffy is sort of like, I guess we did choose to be pirates, and we're going to have to deal with what it means in a bigger way, because that, I have mentioned before how, like, what it means to be a pirate in this universe has felt a little odd for me. And once you guys explained the way that Oda was approaching it, I was like, okay, fine. But yeah, they are outside the law in a way that's like not actually okay. It's not supposed to be allowed. So the idea that they could just like expect things to be treated fairly when they otherwise don't believe they should be subject to laws, it doesn't really like work on a grand scale. Meanwhile, as all this is happening, of course, the townsfolk are hearing that the Straw Hats are responsible, so they're gripping up Nami. She manages to like headbutt the guy and gets out of it, but it is really, watching everybody like gang up on her was really ugly. That bothered me. I think it's just because she's a female character, and the whole like concept of what a mob can get up to, it just made me really uncomfortable, especially considering the fact that she can't fight back in a great way. She manages to get out because of the headbutt. So it's not to say she can't fight at all, but she's not viewed as a threat. So the fact that they go after her just feels really cowardly on their part. We also have this moment where Frankie is just like sitting back and watching Luffy get his ass kicked and kind of enjoying himself for a minute. He's like, it looks like he's just meant to be drinking sake or something, and lets it go on for a bit before he's like, wait, this was my fight. I'm going to get back in there again. So yeah, this is when we see the air bullet that travels at the speed of sound. And he uses this power that looks like it destroys the entire area. It feels like this was a pretty devastating move. But pros, he winds up so out of energy that he can't continue the fight and needs to rest up for a while before they can get back to this. So, oh, I forgot about this part with Sanji and Chopper, because they do have their bit with Usopp and like, you know, dropping some hints, but there's a point at which they're like yelling and racing with each other. And again, I do like how Chopper brings out the silliness in Sanji a little bit. It's a good moment. I don't know. I just liked it. So at the end of the 3 of these episodes, we have all the shipwrights talking together, and they're reminding each other that we can't let these guys get away, and the storm is coming, so they aren't going to be able to leave the island, in like, especially not on their ship with the shape that was in. So we have got to get this thing settled. And I was glad that they brought that back up again, because I was in the, like, while all of this is happening, all I could think about was how this storm is like only hours away and everybody is still in the street watching this fight and not really panicking. And I know they shouldn't panic because this is like a common occurrence every year. But nevertheless, I felt like everybody was losing track of this bigger, badder threat that is inevitable and cannot be stopped. And I was getting a little bit nervous. And it was like, does anybody even remember this is about to happen, guys? So when he mentions it, I was like, okay, good. We haven't completely lost sight of that. Because there's like a character, just some random woman on the street, who says something like, oh, right, the storm. I was so wrapped up in what was going on with Icebarg being shot, I forgot all about it. So I was worried that that was supposed to sort of foreshadow that everybody was going to be so distracted that they get caught off guard and the storm winds up doing like a lot more damage than it normally would, because there is this huge conflict that is drawing everybody's attention, you know? But anyway, the final episode ends with Luffy busting into like the main building, I think like the Capitol building, where Icebarg is resting, because he wants to talk to him. And Icebarg decides that he is going to send Khalifa out there and let Luffy in, and he's going to talk to him. So he tells Luffy, like, yeah, I didn't think that you would like do all of this just to come and kill me. And Luffy says, yeah, I wanted to hear your side of things. I want to know what happened. And this is when he says, I saw Nico Robin with my own eyes, and she is one of you. You know that. And I don't know what I'm supposed to think, basically. And Luffy says, are you sure it was Robin? And Icebarg pulls a gun on him and just says, your words don't mean anything. I called you in here because I have a favor to ask. Let me see Nico Robin again. And I was just like, I don't know what's going on here, because I feel like you don't need to hold him at gunpoint for this. If anything, Luffy would want you to find Nico Robin to ensure that, you know, the rest of the Straw Hats didn't have anything to do with the attempt on your life. But he clearly believes that Luffy is somehow involved in this. And I want to know what he wants to see Robin again for, to begin with. Like, he has a very strong interest in her for some reason, which we have seen because he has her wanted poster and stuff. So what the fuck? So yeah, I'm going to have to wrap. I'm over time here, but these were some pretty interesting episodes. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what happens next. So thank you again so much to the Straw Hat crew for commissioning this. Appreciate you all quite a bit. And I will be seeing you very soon with a new episode. Till then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
was an Unspoiled Network podcast.